The November rain hammered against the windows of Fort McNair's conference room, creating rivulets that distorted the view of the Potomac River beyond. Elena Morales sat in her usual spot, third row from the back, far right corner, where the heating vent rattled just enough to mask the sound of her typing. "Morales, coffee's running low," Colonel Harrison called out without looking up from his briefing notes. His voice carried that particular tone reserved for support staff, polite but dismissive, like addressing furniture that happened to be sentient. "Of course, sir," Elena replied, closing her laptop with practiced quiet. She'd been in the middle of reviewing firewall logs that showed unusual traffic patterns from Eastern Europe, but that could wait. Coffee couldn't, apparently. As she made her way to the break room, she passed Major Jennifer Wu, who was gesticulating wildly about some tactical simulation she'd run. "The problem with civilian contractors," Wu was saying, "is they don't understand the military mindset. They think everything's about algorithms and code." Elena bit back a smile. If only Wu knew that last week's system maintenance had actually been Elena personally rewriting half the base's intrusion detection protocols after discovering a zero-day vulnerability that could have exposed the entire Defense Information Systems network. The break room was a shrine to military achievement, walls covered in plaques, commendations, and photos of stern-faced officers shaking hands with generals. Elena filled the coffee maker, her reflection barely visible in the stainless steel. 34 years old, unremarkable height, business casual attire that helped her blend into any government building. The perfect camouflage. Her phone buzzed. A secure message, routed through 3 encryption layers. "Night watch. Status on firebreak protocol." Elena glanced around the empty break room before typing back, "Phoenix. Implemented. 47 attempted breaches blocked in last 72 hours. Pattern suggests coordinated effort. Full report encrypted on CPAR. Night watch, outstanding. Brief tomorrow, 800. She deleted the conversation and pocketed her phone just as Captain Derek Morrison walked in. He was everything Elena wasn't. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a chest full of ribbons that caught the fluorescent light. "Hey there," he said with an easy smile. "You're the new admin assistant, right? Elena? I've been here 2 years," she said mildly, pouring coffee into the carafe. Right. Sorry, hard to keep track sometimes." He grabbed a mug from the cabinet. "You know, my cousin works in IT. Says it's pretty easy work once you learn the basics. If you ever want to move up from secretarial stuff, I could put in a word." Elena's fingers tightened imperceptibly on the coffee pot handle. Last month, she'd identified and neutralized a sophisticated malware strain that had been dormant in military systems for 6 months, planted by a state actor. The operation was so classified that only 5 people in the entire Department of Defense knew about it. "That's very kind of you," she said, her voice neutral as Switzerland. Morrison poured his coffee, adding 3 sugars. "The thing about cybersecurity," he continued, warming to his topic, "is that people make it sound harder than it is. It's mostly just updating passwords and running virus scans, you know?" Elena made a non-committal sound. She thought about the 120-hour weeks she'd pulled during Operation Stormbreak, writing custom scripts to trace attack vectors through proxy chains spanning 14 countries. She thought about the moment she'd identified the digital fingerprint of Shadowbear, one of the most dangerous APT groups in existence, lurking in what appeared to be routine traffic logs. "Anyway," Morrison said, heading for the door, "don't forget about the Joint Forces Award ceremony next week. You'll need to make sure the conference room is set up. Chairs for about 200. Projection system tested. The usual." "I'll handle it," Elena said. After he left, she stood alone in the break room for a moment, surrounded by the photos of celebrated military careers. None of them showed the quiet victories, the wars prevented, the catastrophes that never made headlines because someone stopped them in time. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was her mother. "Mia, you're still coming for Thanksgiving? Your brother keeps asking what you actually do at that government job." Elena smiled wryly. What could she say? That she was one of the most highly cleared individuals in the United States intelligence community? That she'd personally designed defensive protocols that protected critical infrastructure from nation-state attacks? That while everyone saw her fetching coffee and taking notes, she was actually the last line of defense between American digital assets and some of the most sophisticated adversaries on the planet? "Just administrative work, Mom. Nothing exciting." She carried the coffee back to the conference room, where Colonel Harrison was deep into his PowerPoint about supply chain vulnerabilities. As she set the carafe on the side table, she noticed something on his screen that made her pulse quicken, an IP address that had shown up in her logs just that morning, associated with suspicious authentication attempts. "Sir," she said quietly, "that IP address in your presentation." "Not now, Morales," Harrison waved her off. We're in the middle of something important here. Elena retreated to her corner, opening her laptop. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, hidden by the angle of her screen. If that IP was what she thought it was, Harrison's important meeting was about to become a lot more significant. She pulled up her monitoring dashboard, custom built with tools that most cybersecurity professionals didn't even know existed. There it was, the same IP address, but now it was actively probing their systems, looking for weaknesses. The attack was happening right now, in this room. While Harrison droned on about theoretical vulnerabilities, Elena made a decision. She activated Firebreak Protocol's aggressive mode, her fingers dancing across keys with surgical precision. One by one, she severed the attackers' connections, traced their origin, and began building a digital wall around Fort McNair's systems. Major Wu was still talking about tactical simulations. Captain Morrison was checking his phone. Colonel Harrison clicked to his next slide. And Elena Morales, administrative assistant, nobody important, saved them all. They just didn't know it yet. The rain continued to fall against the windows as Elena closed her laptop, the crisis averted as quietly as it had arrived. She picked up her notepad and pen, ready to play her role again. After all, the Joint Forces Award ceremony was coming up, and someone had to make sure there were enough chairs. But in the shadows of cyberspace, where the real wars were fought in microseconds and silence, the name Phoenix was already becoming legend. Chapter 2, The Weight of Secrets. The Fairfax apartment was a study in deliberate anonymity. No family photos on the walls, no personal touches that might give away anything about its occupant. Just clean lines, functional furniture, and 3 separate secure communication systems hidden behind what appeared to be a standard home entertainment center. Elena kicked off her heels and padded to the kitchen, her movements automatic after another 16-hour day. The refrigerator hummed in the silence, its contents a testament to a life lived between crises, takeout containers, energy drinks, and a wilted salad she'd optimistically purchased last Sunday. Her secure phone chimed, not the one she used for her mother or the one listed on her Department of Defense personnel file, but the third one, the one that officially didn't exist. Phoenix, she answered, her voice different now, authoritative. No trace of the mild-mannered woman who'd spent the day being overlooked in conference rooms. We have a problem. The voice belonged to Director Sarah Chen, one of the few people who knew Elena's real role. The intrusion attempt you stopped today? It was a probe. NSA intercepted chatter suggesting it's part of something bigger, something scheduled for next week. Elena's mind raced. Next week, the Joint Forces Award ceremony. 200 of the military's top brass in one room, including the Secretary of Defense and several foreign military attachés. Physical or digital? Elena asked, already moving to her home workstation. Unknown. That's why I need you on site for the ceremony. Full operational status. Director, my cover will remain intact. You'll be there as administrative support, just like Morrison requested. There was a pause. Elena, I know it's hard, playing this role, but you're our best asset precisely because no one suspects you. After Chen hung up, Elena stared at her reflection in the dark computer screen. She'd chosen this life, traded recognition for effectiveness. But sometimes, in moments like this, the weight of invisibility pressed down like a physical thing. Her personal phone buzzed. A text from her brother Miguel. Saw on LinkedIn that one of your co-workers just got promoted to lieutenant colonel. When are they going to recognize what you do? If only he knew that last year she'd received the National Intelligence Distinguished Service Medal. Of course, the ceremony had been held in a skiff with only 3 attendees, and the medal itself was locked in a vault at Langley. Her mother still thought she was a secretary. Elena pulled up the classified files on her secure terminal, diving deep into the intelligence surrounding next week's ceremony. The more she read, the more concerned she became. Multiple actor groups were showing increased activity. Shadow Bear, the group she'd been tracking for months, had gone dark, often a sign of operational preparation. She worked through the night, fueled by coffee and determination. By 3 a.m., she'd identified 17 potential attack vectors. From the obvious, the building's public Wi-Fi, to the obscure, the Bluetooth-enabled presentation clicker that Colonel Harrison always used. She wrote mitigation protocols for each one, uploaded them to the secure server, and tagged them for implementation. At 5 a.m., she allowed herself 2 hours of sleep on the couch, her secure phone within arm's reach. The next morning at Fort McNair, Elena arrived early to find the conference room already buzzing with preparation for the ceremony. Maintenance crews were testing the AV system while security personnel swept for physical threats. Morales! Lieutenant Jessica Park called out. Thank God you're here. The caterers are asking about dietary restrictions. and I have no idea where Harrison keeps that information. I'll handle it, Elena said, even as her eyes tracked the security team's movements. They were good, but they were looking for conventional threats. None of them were checking the electromagnetic signatures of the newly installed equipment. She spent the morning playing her part perfectly, coordinating with vendors, updating seating charts, ensuring the podium was the correct height for the Secretary of Defense, all while running passive scans on every device in the building through her phone, which everyone assumed she was using to check emails. Elena! Captain Morrison appeared at her elbow, startling her. Quick question. Do you know anything about the Wi-Fi being slow? My team's trying to download some presentation files and it's crawling. Elena's pulse quickened. Slow Wi-Fi could mean network congestion, or it could mean someone was intercepting and analyzing traffic. I'll look into it, she said calmly. You know how to check that stuff? Morrison looked surprised. I'll call IT, she lied smoothly. But she didn't call IT. Instead, she found a quiet corner and pulled out her laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. There, an anomaly in the packet flow. Someone was running a man-in-the-middle attack, but it was subtle, sophisticated. They were only targeting specific IP ranges, ones associated with high-ranking officers' devices. Elena glanced around. She needed somewhere private to work, but every conference room was occupied with ceremony preparations. Finally, she ducked into a supply closet, balancing her laptop on a box of printer paper. The attack signature was familiar. Too familiar. Her stomach dropped as she recognized coding patterns she'd seen before. This was Shadowbear's work, but evolved, refined. They'd learned from their previous failures Elena had engineered. She began crafting a counter-program, her fingers cramping from the awkward position. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the cool air. She could hear voices in the hallway, people walking past, oblivious to the digital battle being waged in their midst. Where the hell is Morales? Harrison's voice boomed somewhere nearby. The secretary's aide is on the phone about seating arrangements. Elena gritted her teeth, implementing the final lines of code. She activated her countermeasures, watching as the attack faltered and died. But something was wrong. The attackers weren't retreating. They were adapting, shifting to a different protocol. This wasn't just a probe anymore. This was a full-scale assault, and it was happening 5 days early. She burst out of the supply closet, nearly colliding with Major Wu. Morales? What were you doing in there? Inventory, Elena said breathlessly. Excuse me, Major, I need to... Harrison's looking for you. He's in the main conference room, and he's not happy. Elena's mind raced. She needed to get to a secure terminal, needed to alert Director Chen, needed to stop this attack before it compromised everything. But Elena Morales, administrative assistant, couldn't do any of those things without blowing her cover. She made a decision that went against every protocol she'd been trained on. Major, she said, looking Wu directly in the eye, I need you to listen to me very carefully. In about 30 seconds, every classified system in this building is going to be compromised unless you get Colonel Harrison to physically disconnect the primary server from the network. Wu's expression shifted from annoyance to confusion. What are you talking about? How could you possibly? 25 seconds, Elena said. Please. Something in Elena's voice must have penetrated Wu's skepticism. The Major grabbed her radio. Security, this is Major Wu. I need someone to disconnect the primary server immediately. Authorization code Tango 77. Major, that requires Colonel Harrison's approval. Now, Wu barked. Elena held her breath, watching her phone's display as the attack reached the final firewall. 10 seconds. 5 seconds. The indicator light went dark. The server was offline. Wu stared at Elena, a mixture of suspicion and awe on her face. How did you know? Before Elena could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the building. Security personnel rushed past, radios crackling with urgent chatter. Through the chaos, Elena heard fragments. Breach detected. All systems compromised. Initiating lockdown. All systems except the primary server. The one Elena had just saved. Morales! Harrison's voice cut through the noise. He stormed toward them, face red with fury. What did you do? Why is my assistant ordering security protocols? Elena straightened, the mask of the meek administrative assistant falling away. For the first time in 2 years, she let them see a glimpse of who she really was. Sir, she said, her voice carrying an authority that made Harrison stop mid-stride. I did what was necessary, and if you'll check with security, you'll find that the primary server is the only system in this building that hasn't been compromised. Harrison's mouth opened and closed. No sound emerging. Around them, the chaos continued, but in their small bubble of space, A profound shift had occurred. Elena's phone buzzed. Director Chen, Phoenix, report. What's your status? Elena looked at Wu and Harrison, both staring at her like she'd suddenly grown wings. Her cover was blown, or at least cracked. 2 years of careful anonymity, shattered in 30 seconds. But the server was safe. The classified data protecting thousands of operations and agents remained secure. Ma'am? Wu said quietly. Who are you? Elena allowed herself a small smile. Someone who just prevented a catastrophe. Major. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a lot of explaining to do. As she walked away, leaving 2 stunned officers in her wake, Elena felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Relief. The burden of pretense, lifted even if only partially, but she also felt fear, because Shadowbear had shown their hand too early, which meant next week's ceremony was more than just a target. It was a trap, and she'd just revealed herself as the one person who could stop it. Chapter 3. Unmasking the Phoenix plotted strategic narrative progression for Elena's pivotal chapter. The user wants me to continue with Chapter 3 of this story. I need to maintain the tension and realism while building toward the climactic ceremony scene in Chapter 4. This chapter should deal with the immediate aftermath of Elena's partial reveal, show her navigating the complicated situation of her blown cover, build tension toward the ceremony, develop character relationships and reactions, continue the cyber threat storyline, set up for the big reveal at the ceremony. I'll keep it grounded in reality. No supernatural elements, just realistic cyber warfare and human drama. The secure conference room at Fort McNair had no windows, a feature that Elena had never appreciated more than now. She sat at one end of the polished table, facing a hastily assembled panel that included Colonel Harrison, Major Wu, and 3 officials who'd arrived within minutes of the alert. Their credentials suggested alphabet soup agencies: NSA, DIA, CIA. Director Sarah Chen appeared on the secure video screen, her expression unreadable. Gentlemen, Major Wu, before we proceed, I need everyone to acknowledge classification level TSSCI with cosmic rainbow caveat. Harrison's face went through several shades of red. Director Chen, with all due respect, my administrative assistant is not your administrative assistant. Chen cut him off. Agent Morales holds clearances that exceed anyone else in that room. Now do we have acknowledgement? One by one, they confirmed. Elena remained silent, her hands folded on the table. She'd run through this scenario dozens of times in training, but reality felt different, heavier. Agent Morales, Chen continued, is one of our primary cyber counterintelligence assets. For the past 2 years, she's been embedded at Fort McNair as part of Operation Ghostwatch. Her administrative cover has allowed her to monitor and prevent 17 major intrusion attempts, including today's. 17? Wu breathed. We only logged 3 incidents in that time frame. The ones you detected, Elena said quietly, speaking for the first time, were the ones I allowed you to see, training opportunities for your security team. Harrison's jaw worked soundlessly. The man from the NSA, badge identifying him as Deputy Director Marcus Webb, leaned forward. The Shadowbear attribution. That was you? Elena nodded. 6 months of traffic analysis and behavioral fingerprinting. They made a mistake in their Unicode implementation that... She stopped, seeing glazed eyes. Technical details are in my reports. Reports I've apparently been signing without reading, Harrison muttered. Then louder. Why wasn't I informed? This is my command. Because, Chen said patiently, Shadowbear had compromised 3 personnel files in your unit. We couldn't be certain who was clean. Agent Morales needed complete anonymity to operate effectively. The 3rd official, a woman who hadn't introduced herself but whose bearing screamed CIA, spoke up. The ceremony next week. Your assessment? Elena pulled up files on her secure tablet, sliding it to the center of the table. Shadowbear's early move today wasn't desperation. It was calculated. They wanted us to show our hand, to reveal defensive capabilities. She tapped the screen, bringing up network diagrams. They've been mapping our response patterns for months. Today's attack was designed to fail, but to fail informatively. English, please, Harrison said, though with less venom than before. They're planning something we haven't seen before, Elena explained. Not a pure cyber attack. Not a physical security breach. Something hybrid. The ceremony brings together military leadership, foreign attachés, and defense contractors. It's not just about stealing data anymore. Webb frowned. Sabotage? Possible, but I think it's more subtle. Elena pulled up another file. Look at the guest list. Specifically, the +1s and support staff. How many of them have been vetted? All of them. Wu said immediately. Then, less certainly, standard background checks. Standard checks don't catch sophisticated legends, the CIA woman said softly. Agent Morales, you believe they've placed assets? I know they have. The caterer's new employee, hired 3 weeks ago, his digital footprint is too perfect. The photographer's assistant, she's used 4 different names in the past year. Elena met each of their eyes. We've been so focused on protecting our networks, we forgot that sometimes the most effective attack vector is human. The room fell silent. Finally, Harrison cleared his throat. What do you recommend? It was the first time in 2 years he'd asked her opinion on anything beyond coffee preferences. Cancel the ceremony, Elena said immediately. Or at minimum, move it to a secure facility. Impossible. Webb shook his head. SecDef won't hear of it. Too much political capital invested. Foreign delegations are already en route. Then we need to control the environment, Elena said. Every device, every person, every signal. And, she hesitated. Knowing what came next would end any chance of returning to her cover. I need to be there. Not as admin support, as operational security. Your cover's already compromised, Chen pointed out. Wu and Harrison know. How long before others figure it out? My cover with you is blown, Elena agreed. But Shadow Bear doesn't know that yet. To them, I'm still invisible. That gives us a small advantage. The CIA woman smiled thinly. You want to be bait. I want to be what I've always been, Elena corrected. The person they don't see coming. Over the next hour, they developed a plan. Elena would maintain her administrative role publicly while coordinating an invisible security net around the ceremony. Wu would be her liaison with uniform security. Harrison, still processing his 2-year blindness, would run interference with anyone asking questions. As the meeting broke up, Harrison lingered. Morales, Agent Morales, the coffee runs, the note-taking, sitting in the back. That was all. Part of the job, sir. Elena began gathering her materials. Though for what it's worth, you make terrible coffee. He barked a surprised laugh. I owe you an apology. Several, actually. You owe me nothing, Colonel. You treated me exactly as I needed to be treated. Although, she allowed herself a small smile. Captain Morrison's offer to help me move up from secretarial work was particularly amusing. Morrison? Harrison shook his head. He's going to have a heart attack when he finds out. He won't find out. Not yet. We need everyone to act naturally for the next 5 days. Elena paused at the door. Sir, that IP address you were presenting yesterday? Pull that system offline. Quietly. I'll send you a clean replacement protocol. Harrison nodded slowly. You've been protecting us all along. It's what I do, Elena said simply, and left. The next 3 days passed in a blur of dual existence. By day, Elena continued her administrative duties, fielding calls about catering and coordinating RSVPs. By night, she worked from her apartment, building an electronic fortress around the ceremony venue. She identified 2 more potential plants among the support staff and quietly had them replaced. She discovered backdoors in 3 separate systems that would have allowed remote access during the event. She even found malware embedded in the presentation files for the award ceremony itself, dormant code that would activate when connected to the venue's AV system. Miguel called twice, wondering why she sounded so tired. Her mother sent texts about Thanksgiving plans. Elena responded between writing code that would save lives, the dissonance of her 2 worlds more pronounced than ever. On Thursday morning, Wu found her in the supply closet again, this time legitimately checking inventory. How do you do it? Wu asked without preamble. The constant pretending? Elena counted boxes of name badges. The same way you do, Major. We all wear masks. Mine is just a little deeper. Morrison still doesn't know? And he won't until after the ceremony. We need authentic reactions from everyone. Elena turned to face Wu. How are the physical security preparations? Enhanced, per your recommendations, though explaining why we needed signal jammers in the bathroom stalls raised some eyebrows. Shadow Bear likes to hide transmitters in places people don't check thoroughly, Elena explained. Learned that in Bucharest. Wu studied her. You've been doing this a long time. Since I was 19. Recruited out of MIT when I hacked the Pentagon to prove a point about their security flaws. Elena smiled at the memory. Director Chen was impressed enough to offer me a job instead of pressing charges. And your family? Thinks I'm a government paper pusher with no ambition? The smile faded. It's safer that way. For them, and for me. They were interrupted by Harrison's voice on the intercom. Morales, conference room, now. Elena found Harrison with General Patricia Hayes, the Joint Chiefs J6, and one of the few people who knew about Operation Ghostwatch from its inception. Hayes stood as Elena entered. extending her hand. Agent Morales, I've been reading your reports. Retroactively, unfortunately. The general's handshake was firm. Outstanding work. Thank you, ma'am. I'm here because we've intercepted new intelligence. Hayes continued. Shadow Bear isn't working alone. NSA picked up chatter suggesting they've partnered with Crimson Tide. Elena's blood chilled. Crimson Tide was a mercenary hacker group, brilliant but utterly immoral. If they were involved, the ceremony isn't just a target, Elena said slowly, pieces clicking together. It's a showcase. They're going to demonstrate their capabilities to potential buyers. Hayes nodded grimly. With our top brass as unwitting participants. We need to shut this down. Or, Elena said, an idea forming, we let them try. Harrison started. Are you insane? Think about it. Elena pressed on. They've invested months in this operation. If we shut it down now, they'll go underground, regroup, try again when we're not ready. But if we control the environment, let them show their hand. We can trace them back to their source, Hayes finished. Identify not just the operators, but their clients. It's risky, Harrison protested. Everything about this job is risky, Elena countered. But this is our chance to dismantle their entire network. We just need to make sure we're better than they are. Hayes considered for a long moment. Do it. Whatever resources you need, they're yours. But Agent Morales, failure isn't an option. Not with who'll be in that room. As Hayes left, Elena turned to Harrison. I need complete access to all systems. No restrictions. Done. He paused. Morales, on Saturday, when this is over, I'll probably disappear. Elena finished. New assignment, new cover. It's how this works. We'll miss you, even if we didn't know who you really were. Elena felt an unexpected tightness in her throat. I'll miss it too, sir. The terrible coffee and all. That night, Elena sat in her apartment, surrounded by monitors showing feeds from every angle of the ceremony venue. She'd done everything possible to prepare. Redundant systems, fail-safes, contingencies for contingencies. Her secure phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number that somehow bypassed all her encryption. Hello, Phoenix. Looking forward to finally meeting you on Saturday. Shadow Bear. Elena stared at the message, her heart racing. They knew. Somehow they knew who she was. She typed back, likewise, may the best code win. Oh, came the response, it will. Elena deleted the conversation and got back to work. Saturday was coming, and with it, the most important performance of her life. Not as Elena Morales, administrative assistant, but as Phoenix, rising from the ashes of her blown cover to face the enemy head-on. The game was no longer about staying hidden. It was about being seen by the right people at the right moment, and making sure that when the Pentagon called her name, she'd already have won.